if Kamala Harris is not sure, because she has in the past spoken on certain issues which have not gone down well in India. So whether she would continue the Biden legacy or whether she would again chart her own legacy where she would privilege certain kinds of issues which may not go very well with the Indian sentiment. I think that needs to be observed. Trump has a record of coming out better in these debates, even when he had faced formidable opponents. In the past, she has not really captured the imagination whenever she has spoken, and that means that there's going to be enormous pressure on her to perform during these elections. The Trump camp seemingly believes that the more she speaks, the less credibility she will generate, which may be folly on their part, but I think that's their strategy. Trump's team certainly wanted mics to be muted because they always get scared whenever Trump is let loose. I don't think it's as doom and gloom for the Democrats as it once looked.
US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are going to confront each other in the first presidential debate on Tuesday. It is going to be, in fact, the first time that the two people will be seeing each other in person, will be sharing a stage together. But what's really going to happen? What are the factors at play? Who has an advantage over whom on which issues? To discuss all this and more, I'm being joined by Dr. Harsh Pant. He is Vice President, Observer Research Foundation. Harsh, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. It is a very important day after Biden having stepped down and Kamala Harris having taken over as the presidential nominee for the Democrats. It's been a short but a very, very interesting run for Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee. Do you think the debate will give her the space to reassert what the government has done so far, what the administration has done, and what she intends to do?
Thanks, Geeta. I think for Kamala Harris, this is a particularly important point in the election cycle, and I think given that she seems to have a momentum on her side, it would be a make or break situation for her because we remember the two disastrous debates that President Biden had with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a record of coming out better in these debates, even when he had faced formidable opponents, like Hillary Clinton in the past. So there is clearly, a history here, and Kamala Harris still remains an unknown quantity for a large part of America, for also for a large part of the world. So I think there'll be lots of attention being paid to everything that she will say. And unfortunately, her own track record, in terms of interviews, is not that great. We know when she was the vice president, she had all kinds of interviews that had been, ridiculed, mimicked, etc. So I think for her, it's that that important point where she can put her stamp on the ticket. This would be her coming out party for a large part of the US and for the world. And also, she will be taking on, hopefully, former President Trump, who has a record also of often using, innuendos and other kinds of tropes to get into the skin of the opponent. So it'll be a very tough fight for her. But I think it's a very important point in her electoral trajectory.
Well, you made a few very important points, Harsh. Let me begin with one of the most important, or two important points that you really brought up. One is that we have seen her interviews in the past, Harsh, and we've seen the very recent interview, and nobody was impressed. While, Joe Biden was a disaster for Kamala Harris, who's and most presidents do it, but training herself on how to really tackle Donald Trump on what to say, how to react. When you're doing all of that and preparing yourself, how do you think you'll manage the stage with Donald Trump, since rebuttals, which they have an opportunity for, not to interrupt, but rebuttals they have an opportunity for. How would she manage that when a very simple interview that she gave for the first time after having been nominated really did not impress anyone?
Yes, and I think she'll have to start from acknowledging that she has a problem. That where Trump for all his foibles and follies often comes across in these debates as person that that ordinary people can relate to, with all the challenges that he poses. I think for Harris, this idea of an ordinary politician, of middle America, relating to middle America, I think that's a huge challenge. She comes from California. She has been a part of that political establishment, and in the last few years, she has not really been, going out there in terms of reaching out to people and making a mark for herself. Perhaps believing that she still has 4 more years before Biden. So I think now that she will face the glare of the world's media, I think she will have to perform under pressure, and often it is said that she has performed well under pressure. So let's see. Let's give her the benefit of doubt here. But I do think, as you rightly said, in the past she has not really captured the imagination whenever she has spoken, and that means that there's going to be enormous pressure on her to perform during these elections. And as you know, Trump has said very casually that, oh, I would let her talk, and I think the Trump camp seemingly believes that the more she speaks, the less credibility she will generate, which may be a folly on their part, but I think that's their strategy. And Kamala Harris, if you notice, she has in recent past tried to veer away from some of the most vile and contentious statements that Trump has made by saying, "Oh, it's an old trope. Let's move on." So I think it will be an interesting, uh, visual out there to see how she tackles Trump, who will come with full throttle, who will come, who knows how to play to the gallery. He has been in the entertainment business. If he knows
Right.
anything, he knows how to play to the gallery. So I think it will be a tough call for Kamala Harris. And I think therefore she has been saying that she's the underdog, perhaps recognizing the fact that if she plays this underdog card, perhaps the expectations would not be that high.
Well, that's again a very important point. But how many of them actually know Kamala Harris? Now, that's an important point that you also made. We'll talk about that. But before that, um, you've spoken of how the Trump camp has gone after Kamala Harris. There are memes. The memesters are having the time of their life. But is she also making the right noise and appropriating the memes itself? Is it her momentum, as many have put it out to be? Uh, is she using this as a momentum, the memes? Or is it
I
is
think,
it
yeah.
conscious? Because a lot of people say, well, owning it does not always work, to your advantage. So can she own it, appropriate the means, and make it an advantage? Or over here, she is at a disadvantage having so many memes.
No, I think she has been very clever. I think she has certainly taken on, appropriated these memes, and she has decided that she will take on these advantages as a badge of honor, or almost. And I think where she really got the momentum going for her was that Biden was so low in the rankings, and the Democratic establishment was so completely confounded, with what Biden was doing, that the only way Kamala Harris could go was up. And I think that has been really the space that she has been able to build for herself. That from the disastrous depths that the despondency that was settling in on the Democrats, she has given them a sense of expectation that they can win this election. And I think, given some of the constituencies, particularly the youth and the women constituencies that she has rallied behind herself, seemingly at the moment, who are working very hard for her. And I think the Democratic establishment, as it has coalesced around her, in contrast to the Republican establishment, which continues to be divided over Trump. I think she has shown that a good candidate often can come from anywhere and can give certain advantages in the short term. Now, as you may know, that the numbers actually have not really moved very much.
Yes.
So initial advantage that she had, it doesn't seem to be working in those battleground states to an extent that perhaps the Democrats would be hoping it would. So I think, therefore, once again, this debate would be so crucial, because I think a lot of the Democrats would be hoping that all the good that she has done over the last few weeks would be reflected in this debate, and therefore they could shift the needle in her favor, which again is a tall order. But I think this certainly this puts her under a lot of pressure, because this would be a make or break debate for her. Because Trump is a known entity. Trump has been in these debates now for ages, but here comes Kamala Harris for the first time on the presidential podium, having this debate with the opponent. And I think the people and the world will be looking very, very carefully. And as we were discussing, she still remains a relatively unknown quantity, even in the US, in terms of policy. So while a lot of excitement has been about her personality, that she's the first Black, first Indian descent woman who is now South Asian descent person coming to the presidential ticket. But I think now the time has come after in September and October, where policies will be scrutinized by people, and there she will have a hard time both trying to convince that she is different from Biden after having served in the Biden administration, and that she's charting her own course. Very difficult things to do. So I think difficulties abound, but a good leader often finds opportunities in difficulties. So one hopes that she would come through.
Well, Harsh, again, a very important point that you make is about the unknown entity. Now, a New York Times Siena College poll that interviewed about 1,700 students and were asking about her, they actually 28% of them said that they still want to learn more about her, that they're still finding out. While Trump, everybody knows about, he's a household name. The fact that there are still so many people, and she's the presidential candidate for the Democrats, there's still so many people who don't know her, who don't know her policies, who don't know what she's willing to do or what she has to offer. That in itself is a huge disadvantage, because it comes from various races. These are factors you cannot club into a vote bank and say, I woo them. So it's a big challenge.
I mean, Geeta, I think, one can also look at it as an advantage for her, because, look, Biden is carrying a lot of burden. The Biden administration is carrying a lot of burden. So there is a lot of dissatisfaction with Biden. So if she can say, or if she can go with a seemingly blank slate, although she was part of the administration, but she can always, if such a large number of people still don't know where she's coming from, then she has a distinct advantage in framing the conversation, the policy conversation around her in the way that she would want. And I think, therefore, this debate is so crucial, because no one is going to follow her policies day in and day out. What they are going to see today, they are going to make up their minds and move forward with it. So I think these debates, therefore, have a larger than life role in the trajectory of presidential elections, because a lot of the people who are not regular followers of politics would just look at this one debate and make up their minds. And I think, therefore, a lot is riding for her on this debate as to how she frames her candidacy, both in terms of her personality and in terms of her policies that she wants to bring out. So both very, very crucial areas where, in terms of personality, you would have people instinctively liking or disliking her. Just as with Trump, people know that they either like him or they don't. In this case, she will be presenting herself, her personality, how she comes across. That would be a big indicator. You would recall this used to be the perennial debate with Hillary Clinton, that whenever she would come, people would say, "Oh, we don't like her as a person, even though her policies might be right." And I think in the case of the other section, would be looking at policies closely and how she differentiates herself both. Again, she has a difficult task. She has to differentiate herself both vis-a-vis Trump and Biden, so that she can also claim that she's a person in her own right. She's a candidate in her own right. So I do think that there is a lot of there's a lot riding on this debate.
Well, Professor Alan Lichtman has already come out and predicted Kamala win, Harsh. But having said that, let's talk about the debate itself. 90 minutes, 2 commercial breaks, and no audience. no mute, the mics would be muted. The fact that the debate rules changed for Biden, and then the Democrats wanted it changed yet again for Kamala Harris, and go back to the previous rules, which was not accepted. And finally, they've given in, and Trump was quite all right with the mute button. So there is going to be no interruption during the debate and no interruption while a particular candidate is speaking. To whose advantage do you see this? Because Trump insisted on it, but could this also be an advantage for Kamala? He's also won the virtual coin toss and has chosen to stand on the left side of the stage. And the last statement would be his, the closing statement. So, what are the advantages over here for Trump vis-a-vis Kamala Harris?
I think Trump's team certainly wanted mics to be muted because they always get scared whenever Trump is let loose. He can be very ill-disciplined. He just shoots off his mouth, and he interrupts a lot, which I think to the majority of the audience is not something that they expect from a presidential candidate. So I think the Trump's team was trying to make these rules so as to project a more presidential Trump, a serious Trump.
Of course.
Yes, forced. And this idea that here is an ex-president who needs to be reminded that he has to be a senior, he has to be a serious candidate. This is the irony of Trump's presidency, that the Trump's team is trying very hard to project him as a serious candidate now. That he's not someone who keeps on muttering through when the others are speaking, etc. So I think there is certainly something that they have got right here. Now, with Kamala Harris, I think perhaps Kamala Harris would get, she had been an attorney. She knows how to conduct these kind of proceedings. She knows how to debate. So I don't think. I think the rule of getting this uninterrupted space certainly helps her as well, because that allows her to go on without getting interrupted in between with her argument, with her case. And I do think that in a sense the rules seem to be favoring both in their own ways. But the closing statement, I think certainly the last person getting the closing statement has an advantage, because he or she would have heard everything and everyone, and one can respond in a manner that perhaps the person going before cannot. So there, Trump would have an advantage, but I very much doubt whether Trump thinks like this. And he often has certain talking points that he wants to convey. He comes with those talking points and he ensures that those talking points are delivered. So I do think that it would be something interesting to see. Again, the personal dynamic between these two, because if you would recall in the past, particularly in the case of Hillary Clinton, we had seen some very nasty situations occurring, and Trump going all out in ways that perhaps was not needed or was not desired. But I think Kamala Harris would have learned from that, and she has been suggesting that all the previous presidential debates would be a lesson as she takes on Trump this time.
Well, again, let's talk about the issues that could come that would be raised over here, because nobody has been told what they've been asked. There are no cheat sheets this time around, only a pen and paper for them to take notes when the other is speaking. This is certainly going to be a campaign milestone, Harsh, for both the leaders. So in that, if we are to assume what are the areas that they have advantages over the other, abortion and reproductive rights certainly is a huge plus for Kamala Harris. She will have a lot of people, a lot of voters, not just women voters, primarily women voters, but not just women voters, many from various states who will actually rally behind Kamala Harris. And this is where we've seen Donald Trump dilly-dally a little, waver a little on the position that they've taken in the past, as opposed to what he's saying now regarding Roe v. Wade.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be an issue. I think we are already seeing the numbers, for example, in certain constituencies, particularly women and the youth, moving decisively in favor of Kamala Harris on this issue. And this is an issue that is now resonating across states. So this is not simply, as they used to say, blue state issue. This is now also very much part of those red states where the Republicans have traditionally held their ground. So certainly, I think for Trump, this is going to be a difficult one. How he handles it would also reflect on this wider question of how sensitive he is to gender issues, because there is a problem there that he faces, given all the cases, given all the uh, challenges that he has faced, and given the ongoing cases, in fact, in the court against him. I think he needs to come across as someone, again, who is serious and who is also mindful that there is a constituency that is, that does not really look up to him when it comes to this issue. So this is certainly advantage Kamala Harris, and I'm sure Kamala Harris is going to use this to make a wider case as to why certain kinds of values, certain kinds of issues that resonate with the youth, that resonate with certain kind of constituencies. She would bring them out much more forcefully than perhaps Trump would. Trump would certainly try to wriggle himself out of this question. There is, there's nothing he can do to salvage the situation. I think he's in a bit of a problem here.
That's true. But the other very important point is immigration. Uh, a very polarizing issue in the United States of America. There are very strong opinion that most people have, and positions that have been taken. Over here, Trump, if he's looking at a certain section, will be consolidating that vote bank. But certainly, there's this entire other section that anyway are not Trump voters, will not, and the fence sitters. What happens to the fence sitters? Will they, looking at the problems that the country is facing today, will they then turn to Trump, or will they still see more sense in voting Democrats?
I think Trump has an advantage here, and Trump has been making this case. If you look at his speeches, he has been using this issue as the framing issue of his presidency, and I think that he would go certainly big on this issue, because he feels, his team feels, if the reports are to be believed, that they certainly have a good case to make against the Biden administration. Now, I think the trick for Kamala Harris would be whether she can dissociate herself from the Biden administration's track record. That, if you look at the polling, most people believe has not been particularly good when it comes to immigration. So I think if Kamala Harris can somehow, wriggle out of this issue and claim a trajectory of her own, that would perhaps give her that space that she needs on this issue. Because you would recall that she was at one point also given responsibility for to manage this issue vis-a-vis certain countries in Latin America, and there we did not see her taking ownership of this issue. So there is a problem in terms of her own record on this issue. So I doubt very much whether she would like to be would like to make this issue the central issue. But clearly on this issue, Trump has an advantage, and Democrats are on a back foot given the larger climate in the US at this point, which is
In fact,
largely against immigration.
right. In fact, there was a statement she'd made about going to the borders where she had actually not traveled to the border. That had become that had really brought on a lot of negative commentary and coverage for the Democratic Party or the administration per se. Uh, Talking about the administration itself, she will be carrying a lot of baggage of the administration. The incumbent, she's part of the Biden administration. It was called the Biden-Harris administration. So we have the Israel-Hamas war, we have the Russia-Ukraine war, but not so much the Russia-Ukraine war where the country stands with and thinks with the administration or thinks alike. Is the Israel-Hamas war. It's what's happened in Gaza that has absolutely split the country. Harish, how much of the brick bat will she have to suffer with the decisions of the Biden administration?
I think she will have to carry that baggage. There is no way she can get out of that baggage. But I think at the end of the day, if the Democrat voters or those voters who are dissatisfied with Biden administration are looking at Trump, I don't think they will find any answer there because he has a very different attitude towards this problem.
Yeah.
So, so what is the option they have? Where can they put their pressure and get some results that they can only do that on the Democrat side. So I think with all the challenges, ultimately the issue would be whether those constituencies that feel very strongly about this issue sit out the elections. They may demonstrate their unhappiness by sitting out and not voting for Kamala Harris. But I don't think that translates into Trump getting votes from that constituency.
You make an important point because she has been very, very respectful of President Biden. And in that, she's also shown what she really stands for. You just spoke of sitting out, so it reminded me that she did not go for the joint session for Netanyahu. The joint session that was held for Netanyahu, she sat that one out. So that in itself is a in a certain way, putting out your policy decisions without hurting sentiments or insulting the administration that you're part of. Having said that, what's your reading on the midterm elections and the performances in the midterm elections? How could they really impact the presidential elections in November?
I think the numbers that are coming up seem to suggest that the Democrats, who were not doing very well at one point, seemingly are gaining some ground on the back of this Kamala Harris momentum. So I don't think it's as doom and gloom for the Democrats as it once looked. But still, I think the Republicans seem to be ahead, and the Republicans seem to be also, this sense that, look, if you have the winning candidate, if you have if Trump has a slight edge, this would be advantage in the Congress. But I do think that that Kamala Harris, her campaign has changed the mood, and the numbers that we are looking at today are much more hopeful of a much more balanced Congress than at one point it looked like.
What about economy? Again, baggage that she might carry, but there are a lot of questions that one asks of the Trump administration as well when he was in power and how he handled the economy and jobs. So on that count, how do you see the two sides really fare?
I think what is interesting, Geeta, is that actually Biden has not done very badly on the economy. It's not as if the economy is going down the drain. If you look at, there was a fear of a recession. It never happened. The unemployment numbers don't look that bad. So clearly, Biden has done something right. I think what has happened is that Trump has taken on this issue and run away with it. He has managed to carve out a narrative which basically denies any policy effort by the Biden administration. And given that there has been an increase in the cost of living, I think people feel it, in their wallets and in the pockets, and I think that is translating into discontent. So I think the issue for Kamala Harris would be, how do you frame the recent positive news that has come out of the economy to her advantage? Because there is widespread assessment that economy is not on the right track. If you look at the numbers, that's what most people would tell you. But if you look at the numbers, actually, it's not doing that badly. So there is a dissonance there, and how Kamala Harris she manages this very interesting dissonance perhaps would be very important, because this certainly continues to be a major issue, and the issue, for example, for the American electorate. And though they used to say it's the economy is stupid, I don't think economy alone will decide these elections. But certainly this remain one of the most important points for the American electorate. And Kamala Harris will have to negate this perception that economy has not really done well under Biden administration, because that's something she can't get away with. She can't really make an argument that she was not part of an administration, because economy is something that people directly relate with the administration. So I think that relatability factor will cut against her. So she would need all her power as a lawyer to make a strong case that the economy actually has done well, and under her perhaps it would do even better.
No, there are indicators that still say that that US is headed towards a recession. Having said that, I think what the people are connecting this the unemployment that exists or the inflation that we're seeing is to the investment that the US is making in wars. So connecting it to how much are you sending abroad when you have so much that you need to do within the country. I suppose the conversation and the debate also comes from there. And will she be able to win on that front will certainly be a question. But in terms of having a plan, having an agenda, when I was listening to her interview last time around, I didn't really think, apart from the child care and the medical care support that she announced, there wasn't much for her that she was actually promising, even in the interview. So, do you think they'll come out stronger when it comes to important policy decisions as to what they are going to deliver for the country during the debate? Because that's going to be critical. They have to spell it out.
Yes, I think most people would be looking at this debate to, as you were discussing, to look at the nuances in policy differences, and because most people don't follow politics on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, it would be very important for them to understand where the two candidates stand, and they would make up their minds on the basis of this debate. There's no doubt about it. I think Kamala Harris's problem, Geeta, has been that look, when you have normal elections, when you have normal candidacies, they have months and years to prepare. They lay out the agenda. They have a team which works on an agenda, which nothing of that kind actually happened with Kamala Harris. So, in a sense, the reality that hit her when Biden finally decided that, look, I am going and you will have to fill in, was, I think, it's too big a vacuum to be filled in a matter of weeks or even months. And I think all the work that her team would have done over the last few months, in fact, the last year, was not done. And therefore, you do see a larger incoherence. There is no big vision here in terms of the presidency. You see one policy here, one policy there, but you don't see a larger coherent narrative about what does Kamala Harris presidency, what would it look like? What would it mean broadly in terms of where it would like to take the US? So I think, therefore, she cannot really disown entirely the Biden administration, because she will need to take some of that from the Biden administration. At the same time, she will have to fill it in with her own effort, with her own policy emphasis that she would like to put in. So I think it's a very challenging task, and one also feels for her that she did not get enough time to prepare for this, and therefore this coherence is also a result of that time management, perhaps.
Just two final questions. One, candidate selection has been a controversial topic this presidential election. When it comes to Biden and then not Kamala Harris not having enough time. But what is your take on the VP selection? That JD Vance comes out and makes the kind of statements that he does. In hindsight, could Trump have done better than JD Vance? And where does Tim Walz stand in all of this? So, what's your take on the candidate selection, VP candidate selection?
I think if there is one area where you have to give marks to Kamala Harris, would be in the VP selection. She did really manage to get the right candidate, because in some ways the role of a vice president is always to fill the void that is there in the presidential candidate, those gaps that need to be filled. And I think Tim Walz has done it very, very effectively. If you look at how he relates to Middle America, how he engages them, the kind of conversations he has with them, very folksy, very traditional Democrat from the hinterland, that kind of a person, which Democrats have actually, you miss in the Democrats. You don't have very many of such candidates anymore, because you tend to get the flavor from the coasts. You don't really get a person who comes from the hinterland. And this, I think Tim Walz has done very, very effectively. He has connected the Democrats to areas, to constituencies where she would have struggled, frankly. And I think it's exactly the opposite that Trump did. He just got an image of himself perhaps a strange image of himself as the vice presidential candidate. I mean, JD Vance is often at times even more extreme on some issues, seemingly, than Trump, and
Exactly.
that creates a problem. That creates a problem because how do you reach out to others? That you have MAGA Republicans are not going anywhere.
There's
But
no balance in here. It's not like Trump says something and the VP is there to, balance it out. It's so
absolutely.
lopsided because he says worse things.
Yes, and how do you then reach out to this enormous constituency that you have to cater to? You can't win just by catering to Mark. He knew this, right? Trump was aware of this because this was the problem he faced last time. So I think he got carried away by the fact at that point in time that Biden would be his opponent. I think the entire campaign of Trump till Biden decided to go was framed around Biden. He was very effective around Biden. He was saying, "Look,
I suppose he's getting somebody younger and saying, well, catering to the younger constituency where you were trying to fight Biden, who was fighting age and all the issues around age, that came with Biden.
absolutely." And I don't think he did a very good job, and I think they're paying for it, in the sense that they did not get any momentum from the convention, and every time Van says something, he often takes away from the support base, and in fact he has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, and I think Tim Walz had been in the news for all the right reasons, and I think that says it all.
And finally, Harris or Trump, whoever comes to power, India has to engage. Where does India stand in their scheme of things? We know that for Biden administration, it is quite important, but so was India important for the Trump administration. So right now, I see a lot of changes in how they're looking at things also, because the world has changed a little in terms of the pulls and pushes, the wars, the China-Russia factor, so on and so forth. So where do you see Kamala stand when it comes to India, or Trump when it comes to India?
I think largely we would see India-US relationship being driven by fundamental structural factors. So I don't anticipate a dramatic change, but I do think that on both sides of the aisle you have a challenge for India. On the Trump side, the challenge would be that just the uncertainty that he brings to the table. Because I see, unlike Biden, where you could be confident that yes, a Biden administration would stand with you in the Indo-Pacific, you are not sure about Trump. Although he did all the right things during his first term, but as you say, the world has changed. His views have evolved. He may not believe that it is important to do certain things that he was doing in his first term. So I think this uncertainty it continues to be a factor. With Kamala Harris, there are other set of factors. That perhaps the domestic agenda might become more significant, because Biden has very craftily kept it out even when there was pressure from the progressives, from the human rights wing of the Democrats. Biden crafted a very forward-looking policy with India. So I think with Kamala Harris, one is not sure, because she has in the past spoken on certain issues which have not gone down well in India. So whether she would continue the Biden legacy, or whether she would again chart her own legacy where she would privilege certain kinds of issues which may not go very well with the Indian sentiment. I think that needs to be observed. But broadly, I think there is no denying that both India and the US will have to work together in the challenges that both are facing will have to be met.
Harsh Pant, thank you so much for joining us here on the debate. It is going to begin very soon, and we'll try coming back to you for an analysis a little later during the day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. Thank